She cooked breakfast for the woman carrying her husband's baby, and smiled doing it. Not because she had forgiven him, not because she was broken, but because she had already seen the bank records, and she needed them both exactly where they were. Stay until the end, because the final thing Evelyn said in that interview will completely change how you respond to people who underestimate you. The Carter estate sat at the end of Halcyon Ridge Drive like a monument to ambition, a sprawling Georgian colonial set back from the road behind iron gates and a half-mile of manicured boxwood. Inside, the ceilings were high, the floors were Tennessee marble, and every room held the kind of furniture that took years and careful intention to accumulate. It was the sort of house that announced, before you ever met its owners, that the people inside had arrived. Evelyn Carter, 51, carried herself the way the house demanded. She was tall, composed, and precise, the kind of woman who wore pearl earrings to a weekday breakfast and never raised her voice when a measured tone could do more damage. She had the sharp, attentive eyes of someone who cataloged everything, a misplaced invoice, an overlong pause in conversation, the particular way a man's jaw tightens when he is lying. 22 years of marriage and co-directing a $40 million regional investment firm had taught her that the most dangerous information is always in the details most people ignore. Richard Carter, 55, was silver-haired and broadly built, the kind of man whose confidence walked into a room a half-second ahead of him. He had the practiced charm of someone who had attended enough charity galas to confuse performance with character. At the company, Carter and Associates Capital Group, headquartered in a glass and granite tower in downtown Nashville, Richard was the public face, the handshake, the keynote, the name on the invitation. For years, he and Evelyn had operated as genuine partners, each understanding that the empire required both of them. That understanding had quietly stopped being true. The cracks began appearing 18 months earlier, so small Evelyn initially excused them, a consulting expense listed in the quarterly report under a vendor she didn't recognize. A withdrawal from the operations account coded to a subsidiary she couldn't locate in the corporate filing index. Richard waving her off. I'll have the accountant send over the breakdown, and the breakdown never arriving. A password changed on a shared financial dashboard. A conference call taken in the driveway, with the car windows up, in February. Evelyn noted each one, said nothing, and kept noting. The night everything changed was a Tuesday in late October. Rain hit the windows in long diagonal sheets, while Evelyn sat in the study reviewing a deposition summary for a minor contract dispute. Her phone buzzed. An anonymous number, no message, only a compressed file attached. She opened it. There were 11 photographs. Vanessa Cole, 28 years old, was photographed in 8 of them. She was striking in the obvious way. Dark hair, easy posture, the particular confidence of someone who has been told she is exceptional since childhood. In 4 of the photographs, she was with Richard. In a restaurant, leaving a hotel in Brentwood, standing beside Richard's black Range Rover with a familiarity that made Evelyn's stomach drop before her mind had finished processing what she was seeing. The 11th photograph was the one that changed the temperature of the room. Vanessa, sideways in a full-length mirror, unmistakably pregnant. 7 months at minimum. Her hand resting on her abdomen with a quiet pride that communicated permanence. Evelyn set the phone down on the desk. She sat for a long moment, listening to the rain. Then she picked up the phone, opened her contacts, and called Gerald Finch, a forensic accountant in Memphis who had once untangled a multi-year embezzlement scheme for a client of theirs. She left him a voicemail asking for the earliest possible meeting. She did not call Richard. She did not cry. Gerald Finch was 63, wore bifocals he was always misplacing, and had a memory for financial irregularities, the way some men have a memory for baseball statistics. He met Evelyn at a private office suite in Franklin, 3 days after her voicemail. She brought 6 years of company records, 3 external hard drives, and a legal notepad on which she had already listed 14 transactions that troubled her. Gerald looked at the list, looked at her, and said, "Give me 3 weeks." He needed 4. What he found was not a man having a midlife crisis. What he found was architecture, a carefully constructed system of financial diversion that had been operating since 2019. shell companies registered in Delaware and Wyoming, fraudulent consulting contracts paid to LLCs that existed only on paper, invoice approval chains that had been quietly restructured to remove Evelyn's countersignature requirement from a specific category of vendor payments. The kind of forensic patience that could only come from someone who knew the company from the inside and had years to be cautious. And then, threaded through the payment records like a signature, a name. Vanessa Cole appeared first as a contractor, an independent financial consultant billing Carter and Associates for advisory services. Plausible. Even, Evelyn admitted, professionally legitimate on its surface. But the billing began 18 months after the first structural irregularities and accelerated in direct proportion to the growth of the shell company network. Vanessa's LLC had received just under $2.3 million over 4 years. A second LLC, registered to a trust whose beneficial ownership traced back to Richard through 2 intermediary entities, had received $4.7 million more. $7 million. Gone from the family estate and funneled into accounts being held, Evelyn now understood, for a different life entirely. A life Richard had been building while smiling across the dinner table, while holding her arm at galas, while co-signing thank you notes to their investors. The affair was not a betrayal separate from the fraud. The affair was the fraud. Vanessa was not a woman Richard had fallen into. She was a partner in a calculated exit. Someone positioned to help him dismantle the company's value from the inside, while he prepared to walk away from Evelyn with the lion's share of what they had spent 2 decades building. Evelyn absorbed all of it in Gerald's office over the course of 2 hours. On the drive home, she stopped at a red light on Thompson Lane and gripped the steering wheel for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then she exhaled, opened her mental architecture, and began to plan. Before we continue with this story, let's take a brief moment to speak a blessing over our lives. May the clothes that cover us never wear out, and may our source of provision never run dry. May the roofs over our heads remain strong, and may our homes be filled with peace, love, and protection. May the favor of God surround us wherever we go, opening doors that no one can shut. May every challenge we face become a testimony of victory. May every tear be replaced with joy, and every setback transformed into an opportunity for growth. May our efforts be rewarded, our dreams be nurtured, and our hearts remain strong even in difficult seasons. We declare that we will not be put to shame, abandoned, or defeated. We will walk in wisdom, grace, mercy, and divine protection. May blessings follow us and our families all the days of our lives. Amen. Back to the story. Richard confessed the affair on a Thursday evening, 11 days after Evelyn had received Gerald's preliminary report. He stood in the kitchen, jacket still on, and delivered what was clearly a rehearsed speech, partial honesty carefully calibrated to minimize damage. He was in love with someone else. He was sorry. He hadn't meant for it to happen this way. There was a child coming, and he felt she deserved to know. He looked, Evelyn thought, exactly like a man who expected to be screamed at and had prepared for it. She didn't scream. She listened to every word with her hands folded on the counter, her expression neutral, her breathing even. When he finished, the silence stretched long enough that Richard shifted his weight uncomfortably. Then Evelyn said, "I appreciate you telling me." Richard blinked. "I've been thinking," she continued, "about the baby. That child doesn't deserve instability. If Vanessa is near her due date, she shouldn't be navigating all of this alone. I'd like to offer her a room in the guest wing until after the birth." The expression on Richard's face was one she would remember for the rest of her life. A man trying to locate a trap and failing completely to find it. Vanessa moved in on a Saturday morning, 14 days later. She arrived in a white Mercedes, accompanied by 2 suitcases and the careful composure of a woman who had steeled herself for hostility, and received, instead, a tour of a beautifully appointed guest suite, with fresh flowers on the nightstand. The household settled into a routine that looked, from the outside, like the most bewildering domestic arrangement in Nashville. Evelyn made breakfast. She asked Vanessa about her prenatal appointments and whether she was sleeping well. She drove her to 2 OB visits when Richard was unavailable. She recommended a pediatrician. She folded clean towels and left them outside the guest wing door. And she listened. The comfort Richard and Vanessa felt in that house grew by increments, and with it grew their carelessness. Conversations they would once have had in hushed tones outside the property now happened in the east sitting room, in the kitchen, in the hallway outside the study. A laptop left open on the dining room table, a document visible on its screen, financial projections for a property in Colorado that Evelyn recognized as a holding she had never authorized. Richard's phone, charging in the kitchen overnight, receiving wire transfer confirmations from accounts Evelyn had never been shown. She photographed each one, methodically, without drama. Meanwhile, Gerald Finch and Catherine Marsh, a corporate fraud attorney at a firm in Brentwood, were assembling the complete legal architecture of the case. Catherine was 44, dry-humored, meticulous, and had won 3 corporate fraud prosecutions in the past 5 years. She reviewed the forensic audit, flagged an additional $900,000 in fund diversions Gerald had not yet mapped, and coordinated with federal investigators who had, she informed Evelyn, already had a peripheral interest in one of the Delaware shell entities. The evidence, by the time it was complete, comprised 847 pages of documentation, 14 witness declarations from former company vendors, verified digital records of every contested transaction, and expert analysis from 2 independent forensic auditing firms. Evelyn reviewed the final binder in Catherine's office on a Thursday afternoon and felt something she hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not grief, but the clean, clarifying weight of certainty. "The shareholders' annual meeting is in 3 weeks," she said to Catherine. Catherine looked at her over reading glasses. "That's a very particular choice of venue." "Yes," Evelyn said. "It is." She called the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation that evening. Authorities had already been quietly briefed. They agreed on timing. The Carter & Associates annual shareholders meeting was held every year at the Wyndham Grand in downtown Nashville, a high-ceilinged ballroom with chandeliers, assigned seating for 340 guests, and a raised presentation platform with a 16-foot projection screen. It was the company's most formal event. Investors in from Atlanta and Chicago, board members, regional press, the firm's senior management team, a gathering at which the Carters had always appeared together, polished and aligned, the image of institutional solidity. Richard arrived early, wearing a charcoal suit and the particular ease of a man who believed he was approaching the finish line. He had told Vanessa the previous week that within a month, once the meeting was behind them and certain transfers were finalized, he would begin separation proceedings. Vanessa sat in the 3rd row of the ballroom, composed, wearing a dark dress, her pregnancy now fully visible. She had been told by Richard to be there, and she had come, believing she was watching the last public act of a marriage already over. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes before the program began. She was wearing a deep navy blazer and charcoal trousers. Her hair was pulled back with the precision of someone who had not been careless with a single detail in months. She spoke briefly to Gerald and Catherine, who were seated near the back with 2 TBI contacts in plain clothes, and then took her seat on the platform beside the CFO and 2 board members. The program began. Richard presented Q3 earnings, strong numbers legitimately earned by the 200 employees who had spent the year building the company's value. He walked through expansion projections, named 3 prospective acquisitions, and received appreciative applause. He was polished, fluid, commanding. Then Evelyn stood. The room's attention shifted with the natural gravity of a pendulum. She thanked the investors. She thanked the staff. She spoke briefly about the company's founding and the values it had been built on: transparency, accountability, and the kind of institutional trust that takes decades to earn and a moment of dishonesty to destroy. Her voice was even. Richard was smiling at her, the benign smile of a man managing a formality. Evelyn clicked to the first slide. A wire transfer record appeared on the 16-foot screen. The date, the amount. The originating account, a Carter & Associates operational fund. The destination account, an LLC called Meridian Capital Advisory Group, registered in Wyoming. Then the second slide. The LLC registration for Meridian Capital Advisory Group, with Vanessa Cole listed as its sole member. The third slide showed 17 additional transfers, totaling $2.3 million, over 41 months. The silence that fell over the room was the particular silence of 300 people processing information their minds hadn't yet found a frame for. Evelyn advanced through 34 more slides. She was methodical. She named each shell entity. She showed the account structures, the fraudulent invoice approvals, the transfer confirmations, the forensic audit conclusions. She noted, calmly, that independent verification had been completed, that external auditors had reviewed and confirmed every document in the package, and that federal investigators had been formally notified 6 weeks prior. "This is not an allegation," she said. "The investigation is complete. The documentation has been provided to authorities. What you are seeing is a record of what happened." The final slide was plain white text on a dark background. "Truth leaves a trail." Richard had not moved. Vanessa was standing now, instinctively, though she had not chosen to stand. Her face had drained to the color of the screen's white margins. 2 men in dark suits appeared at the side doors. They were accompanied by uniformed TBI agents. Catherine Marsh rose from the back of the room and walked to the platform with a document folder under her arm. Richard turned to look at Evelyn with an expression she would later describe, in the interview that made national news, as a man realizing, all at once, every assumption he had built his plan on was wrong. Board members were calling for emergency session. Investors were on their phones. The cameras of 3 press photographers, invited for the routine annual photo opportunity, were documenting all of it. What followed was not a single dramatic scene, but a long, unfolding dismantling. Richard and Vanessa were separated and questioned by TBI agents in 2 of the hotel's adjoining conference rooms while the ballroom was still clearing. Richard retained a criminal defense attorney by phone before the agents had finished their opening questions. Vanessa cooperated almost immediately. The company's board convened an emergency meeting that same afternoon and voted unanimously to suspend Richard's executive authority pending investigation. Catherine Marsh, acting as Evelyn's legal representative and already holding shareholder proxy documents Evelyn had prepared weeks earlier, presented the board with a restructuring plan for interim governance. It was accepted in full. The story broke nationally by 5 o'clock. Nashville executive's wife exposes multi-million-dollar fraud at annual shareholders meeting. The framing in the press was consistent. A woman who had every reason to react emotionally had instead constructed an airtight legal case and chosen the most consequential possible venue to present it. Financial news outlets praised the forensic methodology. Corporate governance commentators discussed it as a case study in shareholder accountability. Evelyn gave one interview to a national business publication 3 weeks later. The reporter asked how she had managed to remain composed while Richard and Vanessa were living in her home. She was quiet for a moment before answering. "I kept reminding myself that the goal was not to make them feel how I felt. The goal was to protect what 200 people had helped us build. That kept the noise quiet." Vanessa's daughter was born 6 weeks after the shareholders meeting, healthy and delivered in a Nashville hospital Evelyn had recommended to her during those months in the guest wing. Whatever else was true, Evelyn had meant what she said about the child. The baby had not chosen any of it. Richard's criminal case moved forward through the spring. He ultimately pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of securities fraud in a deal negotiated by his attorney. Sentencing was pending. The financial restitution order required the full recovery of the diverted assets, both the shell company funds and the real estate holding in Colorado that Evelyn had spotted on that open laptop screen 8 months earlier. Vanessa entered a deferred prosecution agreement, cooperated fully with investigators, and was required to repay her portion of the received funds. The divorce was handled by Evelyn's team with the same precision as everything else. Given that the fraudulent transfers had involved marital assets, the settlement, governed by Tennessee law and supplemented by the civil fraud recovery action, left Richard with considerably less than he had planned to take. By late spring, the Carter estate was quiet in a different way than it had been quiet in October. The guest wing had been empty for 2 months. The gates at the end of Halcyon Ridge Drive still opened each morning at 7, but now when they opened, it was for Evelyn alone. She stood in the study one evening in April, the same room where she had opened that anonymous file on a rainy October Tuesday, and looked at the walls she had chosen, the furniture she had selected, the photographs on the shelves she had arranged over 22 years. The house had not changed. It had simply been clarified. Carter & Associates Capital Group emerged from the restructuring with its institutional reputation bruised but intact. Under new executive leadership, including the promotion of two long-tenured senior managers Evelyn had championed to the board. The firm's Q1 results exceeded projections. Three major investors who had publicly expressed concern in the immediate aftermath of the meeting had returned, each citing the transparency of Evelyn's disclosure as the reason for their continued confidence. She had been asked to take the chair of the board's new governance committee. She accepted. The final question the reporter had asked her, before the interview ended, was simple. Did you ever doubt your plan? Evelyn had looked past the recorder, briefly, at something the reporter couldn't see. Not the plan, she said. There were moments, sitting at that breakfast table, handing her orange juice, watching them both believe they had already won, where the weight of it was considerable. But doubt in the plan? No. I had the evidence. I had the timing, and I had 22 years of knowing exactly how that company worked. She paused. They thought they were taking something from me. They didn't understand that every day they stayed in that house, they were giving me exactly what I needed. The recorder clicked off. Evelyn Carter straightened the papers on her desk, picked up her coffee, and walked to the window. Outside, the boxwood was green, the iron gates were open, and the long driveway was empty, belonging, at last, entirely to her. People thought patience meant surrender. They never realized patience was my strategy. Evelyn Carter. Before you go, remember this. Life may bring disappointment, betrayal, and unexpected challenges, but those moments do not define your future. Your strength is revealed by how you respond when things go wrong. Keep moving forward. Stay patient when others rush, stay honest when others deceive, and stay focused on your goals even when the road is difficult. Every setback can teach you something valuable, and every challenge can make you stronger. Believe in yourself, trust the process, and never give up on your dreams. Your story is still being written, and your best days may be yet to come. Thank you for watching.